Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. I am your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, the Juice, Dave Sadler. On today's show, we have a host of headlines to go over, including the ongoing saga of the UFC light heavyweight champion, Jon Jones. Also, Mirko Cro Cop re-signs with the UFC. Yes, that is not a lie. He is re-signing with the UFC, expecting to fight here in a few months. Also, we'll recap Bellator 132 and a couple of moves Bellator has made in some of their recent upcoming cards. Also, World Series of Fighting 17 was this past weekend. We'll go over that. And we will also, of course, break down UFC Fight Night Boston, and we will round out the show with our picks for UFC on Fox 14. Johnson versus Gustafsson from Stockholm, Sweden, this Saturday on Fox TV. Once again, I'm Jim Graham. Alongside me is the Juice, Dave Sadler. How's it going, Dave?
Good. Dude, it's snowing outside.
I know. Tell me about it.
Like, I went to bed like 5 hours ago, no snow. Woke up, snow. What kind of world is this?
Well, that's what I have to look forward to after the show is shoveling, so
Hey,
that should be fun.
check this out, Jim. I know that this is MMA. This is sort of MMA related. Can you believe I'm a jerk at work? I was told I was a jerk.
Really?
This
Why is
guy.
that?
This guy.
In relation to what?
I guess just like in general, in life, I don't know. Look at this. Sad guy.
Huh.
Anyway. Oh, hey, why don't you tell everybody the record of our trivia crack game? How's that working out for you?
I think, are we 1-1 now, or no?
I believe I'm up 1-0.
I don't know. Well, after that was the first game I had ever played, and I lost, and since then I've won 6 in a row overall. So
It's all right.
Starting to get better.
Hashtag Dave is crushing it.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions here. You don't even have your mat out yet, so I'm not sure if we can get that going yet. So
I don't have my what out?
it's from Office Space. The guy wanted to come out with a jump to conclusions mat.
Oh.
They had different conclusions that you could jump to.
I assure you that I am the greatest trivia crack player on the planet.
All right, well, let's move on here as we get the headlines here on Beyond the Cage. I want to start first with this Jon Jones thing. The interview itself, say what you will about it, but he said something that really sticks with me, and that is the fact that he said, and this is his actual quote, "I don't have a drug problem. I just got caught."
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I've met people that have been through AA and NA, and someone who says that is an addict. This is not someone who tried this drug once, got caught for it, and never wants to touch the stuff again. This is somebody who has admitted to use, multiple use, and whether or not he uses it a lot as he did a few years ago or more than ever, he is still using it on occasion, which to me is an addict, especially of a drug of this substance. This is not a drug that really does anything for you other than the fact it could kill you anytime. So to me, this is a problem. He is an addict of this substance, and he needs help. The fact that he got caught once already, Dave, and he's not addressing this issue, the fact he spent 1 day in rehab, to me it's very, very likely it's going to happen again.
I agree. Our good friend Ray Flores was unable to watch the actual interview, so I videotaped a couple parts, and I'm going to play it. This is one of my favorite parts of the interview. We already know the way the question is worded. You know, she's kind of like, you got popped for cocaine or whatever. Is this the first time you've tried it? And listen to his response.
Oh, maybe.
Here we go. Gotta turn it up.
How did you use cocaine up until that point? Well, I had done it before, quite a few times in college. But I had, experiment with it. So that's really it.
He used it quite a few times before in college, but he was just experimenting. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was an athlete when he was in college that wasn't tested. To me, it's a fluff piece. Essentially, if you listen to the whole thing, he threw the NFL under the bus, saying that one of his brothers said that cocaine is a big deal within the NFL, and it's just not, it's not common knowledge, it's not publicized, which I'm sure Fox loved the fact that it threw the NFL under the bus. Second of all, it just, the whole interview, Fox is in bed with the UFC, and the interview doesn't make any sense to me because they're not going to trash Jon Jones, because if for some reason they were ever able to have Jones headline a Fox Sports 1 card or a Fox Sports card, they want that. They need Jon Jones. So they're not going to ask hard-hitting questions. There were so many open-ended questions that she could have followed up and pressed the issue, but she never did. And that's what I don't like.
And that's probably, like you said, on the network more so than it is on Carissa Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I could be wrong, but that's kind of probably what I was getting reading the excerpts. And if you couldn't hear our audio that Dave played for you, SI.com has a great write-up about this interview. That's what I looked over. So if you're looking for like kind of a write-up, or if you don't, didn't DVR it, or you don't want to watch the replay, you just kind of want to read what was said. The Sports Illustrated did a great job doing a write-up on their website. So that's where I got a lot of my information, and I got that big quote that I'm kind of sticking on here. But yeah, it was kind of set up to make Jon Jones. He's looking bad. There's no way around it. But him try to not look as bad with this interview. And when we were preparing for the show, Dave, you kind of brought up that, and I read the excerpts. And had this interview not been done by Fox Sports, I'm thinking it had been done by, let's say, 60 Minutes, maybe Barbara Walters on 2020, somebody that will ask the questions to be needed, it probably would have been a better interview.
Yeah, my sticking point is still, if you're the champion, you're the number one in the sport, you don't just try cocaine. And he said he's tried it before, and there was another part. I don't know if you have the full transcript in front of you, but it was something to the effect of, I did my fair share of partying when I was in college. When asked if he did any other drugs, that was his response. So, yes or no, you didn't do other drugs when you were in college. But it's a good interview. Could have been a lot better.
Here's some of the stuff that he mentioned. He said, I had done it quite a few times in college. I had experimented with it, but that's really it. It has never been an issue. I have dipped and dabbled in my share of partying. My friends and family know there's no room in my life to be a cocaine addict. And then when asked about his one day in rehab, he said, me going to rehab, it was like a collective decision between myself and some of my business partners. They thought it would be good. I told them right away, I don't have a drug problem. I just got caught. And that was the issue I had with. And then he said, I just made a really dumb decision and got caught with my pants down in this whole situation. He said, no excuse for it. I can just apologize. Now, was it stupid he got caught? Yes. But when you admit that you have a problem, and other people have said that you've used this and it's been rumored for a long time, it is a problem. It wasn't just a one-time thing. And that's the issue people are having with. Had this been proven, Dave, that he, for some reason during a training camp, wanted to try cocaine, and everyone's like, whoa, this is a shocker, I can't believe this, his mom is shocked and all this other stuff. But when all the people close to him are kind of like, yeah, I thought it was going to happen, something's wrong. It needs to be
Absolutely.
addressed. And as of right now, he hasn't been suspended, but finally, Dave, the UFC has fined John Jones $25,000 for violating their code of conduct. So at least something has been done to this effect. Something. And I'm just wondering why it took so long for it to come out that he had been fined this money. That should have been immediately released that he had been fined.
25,000, huh?
Well, I mean, what are they gonna? How much, are they supposed to fine him? You know what I mean? He had to get fined something, right?
We'll take away his whole bonus. He made at least $1 million, and they gave him the fight of the night bonus. Take the whole bonus away.
Yeah, they should. Well, I guess that ends up being half the bonus. Yeah, they probably should just not gave him the bonus, or gave the bonus to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least something was done, because it didn't look like anything was going to get punished to him. So I guess somewhat kudos that they punished him. So again, ongoing saga. I'm sure next week another thing will come out and we'll talk about it. So the ongoing saga of John Jones. I wish I had. I don't know. You probably don't have it queued up, Dave. But if you had like the Days of Our Lives music queued up here, that's what's describing John Jones right now. It's like a soap opera with him. So.
How's that? Or how's this?
Yeah.
The
Saga
of John Jones.
It sounds like he's going to get his own reality show with all this drama.
Oh man, I screwed that up. Say that again. Say it again.
It sounds like he's going to have his own reality show with all this drama.
Hey.
All right, let's move on here. Let's talk for 2 seconds here. World Series of Fighting 17.
Ooh.
Yeah, it happened. You had all but the main event go into the third round. I guess it was classified as the co-main event, as Joe Condone took on Jonathan Nunes. Condone was able to submit him in the third round. That was the only finish until the main event, as Jake Shields does what he does. He gets the fight to the ground, he works position, and this time he got a submission in the first round, submitting Brian Foster, who was looking pretty good on his feet, Dave, where most people thought he'd have the advantage, but he kind of got a little overzealous there. Swung a couple of big hooks. Shields did perfect, ducked under, changed levels, got the takedown, and then from there worked the position and got the rear naked choke. Another win in the World Series World Series of Fighting for him, and because he probably didn't take any damage, and we know Polares was completely unscathed in his title defense against John Fitch, I imagine we'll see Shields Polares pretty soon here. And it kind of surprised that after beating Ryan Ford in his World Series of Fighting debut, we already didn't get Shields Polares, but we get it now probably, I don't know, maybe March. I don't know. I mean, both these guys didn't break too much of a sweat.
Hey, do you think when Jake Shields accidentally submits somebody in the first round, do you think he's shocked as well? Like, he's like, whoa, what was that? What just happened?
Maybe, but Brian Foster hasn't fought anyone that good in a while, I guess, and I still think he's a solid competitor, but obviously Jake Shields' ground game is world class, and if you give him an opening, he can do things like that. But yeah, maybe he's a little shocked he got a finish, but I think it was the fact he was able to get the back. If you look at most of his fights, he's not always able to do that, and then we see pillow fist. That's usually what happens, but he got the finish. So I guess kudos to him on what was pretty much a bad card, as we predicted.
Hey, I'm on Twitter, and Mike Chiappetta, who I think does he write for Junkie?
I'm not sure if he writes for anyone at the moment, but definitely a respected media member.
So he just put on Twitter, Adam Sella, the guy Uriah Hall knocked out on The Ultimate Fighter, was on a televised World Series of Fighting main card Saturday. Made a $1,200 purse. After license fee and fine for missing weight, he walked out with $835.
And he lost.
Correct. Thought that was interesting.
You would think he'd get paid a little more for being on World
Jake
Series
Shields.
of Fighting, but I think that goes to show, Dave, that World Series of Fighting is not going to be around that much longer. It seems like they have a lot of problems.
What was I gonna say? Jake Shields brought home $65,000. So there you go.
I have a feeling, Dave, that somehow World Series of Fighting, if it folds, or maybe somehow Bellator swoops in and buys up.
Speaking of Bellator swooping in and buying up, did you hear that Mirko Cro Cop is going to be back in the UFC after I think the UFC swooped in and stole him from Bellator.
I guess. I mean, yeah. I think
Was
if
that a
you're
good
Bellator,
transition or no?
it wasn't bad. If you're the UFC, I don't know if you really win in this scenario. We're talking about a guy who's lost a couple kickboxing fights. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's 40 now. I'm going to double check on this, but he's not young. I can tell you that much. And I'm getting the report here. He hasn't fought in the UFC since 2011 when he lost 3 straight fights to Frank Mir, Brendan Schaub, and Roy Nelson. So it's going on 4 years. Yep, he is now exactly 40 years old. Since leaving the UFC, he has gone 3-1. His loss was to Alexei Olenek, who I believe now is in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he is now in the UFC, and he has won his last 2 fights. You know, Olenek's a solid competitor, but his last 2 fights after that loss were against the same man, and that was in the Inoki Boomba organization known as IGF, and he beat Shitoshi Ishii twice due to a knockout in the second round. So I don't know how much stock that really holds, but he's back. My thinking, Dave, is he's back for 1 fight, win or lose, and then he actually retires. He wants to retire in a big-time organization, and that's my feeling on this signing. I highly doubt he fights more than once.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting call-up, so to say. But, again, you know.
You know what would be great, Dave? If he took on Big Nog and they both retire. Because they both need to, and it would be the perfect way. You got 2 of the Pride greats, you know, up against each other one last time. You know, both have one last fight, and I think that would be awesome.
In Japan?
Yeah, that would be ideal, but it doesn't look like they have Japan on their radar. But I'm thinking that's a solid main event for a fight night, or a solid co-main event for either a Big Fox or even a pay-per-view. Now, it said it's targeted for April, but who knows what that's going to be around. I just think that, that's a great way for them to kind of both go out. That's my thinking.
It's not a bad idea.
But we'll see what happens. Well, let's get to Bellator, though. Before we get to the fight, Bellator 132, Douglas Lima, he will be out of his title defense against Paul Daly on that British Evasion card coming up in the middle of February, and in light of that news, Dave, they have added another big-time fight.
Sorta.
Liam McGarry against Emmanuel Newton, I think, will still be the main event for their 205-pound title, but they added King Mo moving up to heavyweight to take on Shek Congo. I don't know why they're adding this fight, but they are, and I don't know. I honestly don't think it's that good for either gentleman, but nevertheless, they're putting it on there. And I think they had a way to save Paul Daly being on that card, and that is a tournament winner. In fact, a 2-time tournament winner in the welterweight division, the Russian known as Andrei Korzhakov.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't he take on Paul Daly? It could be for an interim title, but since Lima's only going to be out till April or May, have Daly and Korjakov fight, and then the winner fight Lima. That was my kind of quick fix for that, but I don't know what's going on with Andrei Korjakov. I haven't heard any rumors about him. I don't know if, much like his teammate Frodo Hasbulaev, if there's any visa issues or whatnot preventing him from getting into Bellator, but he has not kind of been mentioned here, and I'm thinking that would be a great fight, a fight they could still keep on the card if they wanted to, or move it. That could be a main event for a Bellator card if they wanted to, but I don't know. We'll see. I guess more will develop. He hasn't been canceled off the card yet, but I'm hoping that would be very nice to see Korjakov and Daly.
Yeah, Daly, it says they gave him Andre Santos. That's what I'm reading.
All right. I hadn't heard he got an opponent, but I don't know
who or what that is, but
it's obviously a guy he can beat to keep fighting Lima.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they don't want to book Korjakov, because they'll probably give Korjakov someone no one's ever heard of, so he can fight the winner of Daly and Lima. But personally, I don't know. To me, Daly hasn't fought in Bellator in like over 18 months or something. To me, it's fine having him fight someone good.
It says here on BellatorMMA.com, in the upper left corner, it says welterweight title fight, TBA versus Daly. Then it says Newton versus McGeary, Sojuku, Vassal, Congo, King Mo, Page, and Melender. Those are the 5 main card as of this moment.
Well, we'll see, but I'm thinking that would have been a nice fix. But
yeah,
we'll see. I maybe it's just also because I really like Andrei Korjakov. I mean, that guy's pretty good.
Who doesn't?
So. All right. Well, speaking of Bellator 132, I had a feeling. Obviously, World Series of Fighting was what we expected, not being a great card. But honestly, besides the main event, which we thought would definitely be good, Dave, the rest of the Bellator card was actually halfway decent. I was actually pretty impressed with the performances we saw Friday night on Spike TV for the 4-fight main card. The first fight of the evening, Fernando Gonzalez against Mario Zaramkis. I tell you what, I thought this was a fantastic fight. I mean, both guys threw something like over 300 strikes. I think they said there was like over 600 strikes in this fight.
323 or something in the first round.
Yeah, that was combined. Yeah, I mean, I think they said that there was over 600 for the fight. I mean, both guys were throwing bombs. I don't know if I've seen a fight where guys have thrown that many strikes and that close proximity. We really only saw like one knockdown. I mean, this was rather impressive by both guys, and it didn't look like they were holding back. They were throwing shots, and tremendous fight. And it definitely could have went either way. When it was all said and done, the decision went down to Gonzalez, and it did seem like he had a little more oomph there, and I think it lasted maybe a tad longer than Zaramkis. But boy, this was a great fight, and if you haven't seen this one, definitely go and watch it. I thought this was tremendous, and one of the, for guys, well, people kind of heard of Zaramkis, but for a guy no one's really ever heard of in Gonzalez, I tell you what, he put on a show, and a guy that I think is definitely worthy of, maybe that's who Korjakov takes on next. He's definitely a guy I think, could move up here for the Bellator's 170 division.
Yeah, I can't believe it went longer than 5 minutes.
Incredible.
Like, I was watching and I was like, man, somebody give me a water. Stat. See, look. Here's my water bottle to prove it. No. One thing that was weird to me, when they showed the stats at the end of the first round, I was completely baffled that they said that Gonzalez hadn't landed as many. I thought he landed way more than Zaramkis, but he was landing the more powerful punches. So, the judges got it right, and to me, if you looked at Gonzalez, I think he's got room to make that he can make it to 55, because he's going to start fighting monsters at 70 inside of Bellator's division. So, it's an option for Mr. Gonzalez. Had a little excess baggage on the side over here.
Yeah, it's possible. the next fight, the rematch, as everyone was anticipating, Virgil Zwicker against Houston Alexander, ended up way better than the first one. The first one was a lot of Alexander getting takedown and being on top. Of course, then he had the illegal foul, which led to the draw, and I guess which prompted this rematch. This time, I guess, in Zwicker's neck of the woods here in Temecula, and he was able to stop the takedown for the most part. Didn't stop it in the first round. Definitely lost that round. And then in rounds 2 and 3, was able to keep the fight standing. Landed some very nice bombs, including a really nice kind of. I think it wasn't. He landed a nice uppercut, but I think just after a failed takedown attempt, Houston Alexander was kind of getting back up, and he cracked him with a hard right. And that to me was probably the most significant strike of the fight. And Houston Alexander could never really get his feet under him to really kind of sit and counter. He landed a couple of nice shots, but he seemed really desperate to get the takedown, and when he wasn't, Zwicker was all over him and definitely deserved the split decision victory in my eyes, winning 29-28. And then real quick, we had Georgi Karakhanyan, former World Series of Fighting featherweight champion. He made his Bellator debut, and he made short work of the rising prospect and former USA wrestler there in Bubba Jenkins, submitting him in the first round. Your thoughts on those two matchups, Dave?
The Karakhanyan, two things I came away from. He goes hard on the guillotines, and I was surprised that Bellator mentioned World Series of Fighting during his fight. Did you notice that?
No, I guess I didn't, but they're allowed to say the organization.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they brought up the fact that he was their former, featherweight? The former featherweight champ from World Series of Fighting. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And, he looked good. And then now he's got they gave him the title shot. So, yeah. I mean, can't have a better Bellator debut than that, can you?
No, that was pretty good, and definitely was a good setup to the man he would be taking on in Patricio Pitbull, who took on Daniel Strauss in the main event. And I tell you what, Dave, we thought that Strauss would kind of go back to his roots in this fight and really try to grind Patricio Pitbull, get him up against the cage, take him down, but that was not really the case. In fact, when he did try to do that, Dave, he either got stone cold or Pitbull would reverse the situation and end up turning into a positive for him. So right. The strategy we thought would work for Strauss did not work, and the stand-up game where we said you're kind of playing into the hands of Pitbull actually was playing into the hands of Strauss, who I don't know if it was his speed, his intensity, maybe his combinations, maybe the fact that he's a southpaw, but it just seemed like Pitbull, Dave, for the first time I think since I've ever seen him fight in Bellator, which has been quite a few years, he actually looked kind of lost on the feet.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like he knew where stuff was coming from Daniel Strauss, which is very, very rare for Patricio Pitbull. But when it came to the grappling, which he obviously was prepared for, that's what he was drilling and training on. You could tell. It showed in this fight. He was prepared for it and looked better at the grappling game than Strauss. And when it came to the grappling game, that's ended up being Strauss's downfall, as once again he tried for another probably ill-advised takedown there towards the end of the fourth, maybe trying to secure it up in his minds, gets reversed, gives up his back, and then, much like in the current fight, Dave, allows a rear naked choke to be sunk in just minutes before the end of a round, and he taps and loses another title fight due to a rear naked choke. And this is a fight where, if it wasn't for the foul, Dave, would clearly be up 4-0, in my opinion, and would have still been up with the foul because I would have gave that round a 9-9. But a fight where he was winning, a fight where he had Pitbull hurt, a fight where it looked like he maybe could have finished, and for whatever reason, Dave, he wasn't able to get it done. He made another mental lapse and got finished. Yeah,
I know he lost, but I thought Strauss was a very much improved fighter than what we've seen previously. He confused a crafty veteran in Pitbull. His strikes looked good. Like you said, I don't know if it was because of the southpaw or what it was, but Pitbull was confused, and Strauss looked amazing for the first 4 rounds. And then he just made a mistake and paid the price. So, as a champion, I mean, that's what Pitbull does. He doesn't have to look uber impressive through all 5 rounds, but he's able to wait, and capitalize on a mistake. So, you know, it it'll be interesting, the title fight with Pitbull and Karakhanyan, because Karakhanyan wants to keep it on the ground, or he'd like to go to the ground, but is that a smart play against Pitbull? I don't think so.
Real quickly, let's talk about the foul situation. Of course, Daniel Strauss had a
Yikes.
point taken away. That was in the second round, right? Or was it the third?
I
I want to say it was the second.
want to say it was the third. I don't remember exactly.
Well, regardless, it happened, and this was after both guys kind of had some ill-advised groin shots. But if you actually look at the foul that led to Strauss getting his point taken away, that was due to an eye poke. He kind of went up and poked Pitbull in the eye, and Big John was saying, yeah, you got him in the cup or whatever again, and you can't do that, and you're getting a point taken away. But the actual foul that it happened on was not another groin shot. It was an eye poke. Now, I agree, he already had fouled him like 3 times, and a point needed to be taken away, but it being taken away on the basis of a groin shot in that instance was wrong. That was not why the foul should have been taken away. He should have been warned and said, hey, you already fouled the guy for this. You already poked him again. Now you eye poked him. If you do any sort of foul, I'm taking the point away. And I guess that's why at that moment maybe I had a little bit of a gripe with it being taken away because it wasn't a groin shot, which if it was at that instance, absolutely take the point away. It was a different type of foul that time was clearly intentional. It was kind of in a weird kind of scramble thing, and he got poked in the eye. So I think that kind of maybe somewhat changed the tone of the fight in both fighters' eyes, because then you had later in the fourth when Pitbull fouled Strauss on that groin shot, and the point wasn't taken away, and it was definitely a lot of fouls in this fight, and I don't know if that played into Strauss's head or not. Maybe that's why he had that mental lapse, because it wasn't long after that he gave up his back. Very interesting fight, and one that I hope gets run back very soon. Not just because of because of Strauss dominating, but also because of all these fouls. I like to see maybe a fight where maybe these fouls, hopefully they don't happen again like this in a potential rematch.
Absolutely. The fouls they're just part of the sport. I don't think any of the ones in this fight were real intentional. I like how Big John McCarthy kind of controls the situation and explains. He does his best to explain to everybody what's going on, so you kind of know. It's not just like go to your corner, stand there. He was explaining it. He was mic'd up, so we had a pretty good idea of what exactly the ref was thinking and what exactly was going on. So
now it was the second round, and if you go to Sheerdog, they always do like a play-by-play, and they kind of said what I said, and he goes, Strauss puts on a long straight left in Pitbull's breadbasket and falls with the knee to his body, his shin appearing to climp the Brazilian's cup. Ferrari says he's all right, but the next one catches him in the groin too, and now Pitbull is upset. Referee John McCarthy calls time and allows Pitbull to recover. When action resumes, Pitbull shoots for a takedown and gets stuffed by Strauss. A left hand scores for Strauss, but he catches Ferrari with a finger to the eye as the champ charges forward with punches. Referee McCarthy deducts a point for what he deems as a low blow. So even Sheerdog is saying that the foul, while there was a foul, it was not a low blow, and a point shouldn't have been deducted for another groin strike, which
Right.
is, again, how I interpreted. Now, you can also, like I said, make the case that it was another foul committed by Strauss, and a point needed to be taken away. You can also use that argument, but people talk about instant replay and stuff, and this is a situation where you can maybe see it used. You can maybe go, all right, was that in fact an illegal blow? And Big John could go over real quick, see that, yes, it was an illegal blow, but not the one I thought it was. And that may have swayed his mind.
Well, the one positive that I can take from it is that it didn't necessarily affect the outcome.
You're right, not at that juncture, no, I don't think it did. But since the guys have 5 minutes to recover, Dave, they're given 5 minutes. You're telling me in that 5 minutes the referee couldn't go over and look at a monitor real quick just to make sure everything was correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically have a built-in review time right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
yeah.
something they should consider. That's all.
Yeah. There's a lot of little things that go into it as well, because you can't, during that time, you can't be coached. You have to be in neutral corners. I mean, I guess technically, doesn't somebody need to, if Strauss gets kneed in the groin, doesn't the referee need to have eyes on Strauss to make sure that he is okay?
Yeah, but isn't that what the doctor at the cage side is also for too?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more logistical.
They're not just paying him to sit there.
Well, have you been to some of these local fights in Illinois?
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
They got to pay someone to be there, so I don't know. It's just something I think about when situations like this arise.
Excuse me.
And real quickly, Cara Canyon Pitbull. Do you think that will happen? What do you think that's going to happen? April?
In the summer?
Double main event with the Lima return?
Is it too early for a summer series joke?
Yeah. There's snow on the ground, Dave. It's too early for SummerSlam.
Well, you know, we have March 27th, Bellator 135. That's as far as they have scheduled currently. I'm thinking, just a guess, that wherever Bellator 136 is might be at that first show, like in April, because everything else is pretty loaded. There's no reason to load it more.
All right, well, let's get to the highest rated Fox Sports 1 UFC card in history. UFC Fight Night Boston. As 4 fights were shown on the main card.
Hold on.
What?
That's such a terrible argument that this is the highest rated card ever. Because
it's not an argument, it's a fact.
Okay. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, when we first started doing podcasts, we would get like 30 people to like watch the episode, right?
Sure.
And now the number's getting higher and higher and higher that are watching the episodes. So, shouldn't every show that you be on be a little bit higher? I mean, if you're doing your job correctly at the UFC with the promotions and all that kind of stuff, shouldn't you be making more and more money as you go? Or more and more viewers as you go, I should say?
Yeah, and you can also make the case that the bar wasn't that high to begin with.
Ooh, good point.
That they didn't need to have that higher ratings to be the highest rated Fox Sports 1 card, right? Because the ratings were not that high, and that is one of the reasons why it broke the record, and 2, that's one of the reasons why it shattered the record by quite a wide margin. And it will probably be quite some time until, again, this is just a Fox Sports 1 card. This is not a Fox card or a pay-per-view or anything like that. It's by no means the highest rated UFC event in history, by any means. But so far, since they've been doing Fox Sports 1 shows for, 3 years now?
Yeah, about that.
It's been the highest rated one. So, that's all. And it was an okay card for it being the highest rated card. And that's mainly due to one gentleman in particular, who we'll get to in a moment, who fought in the main event. But the first fight of the evening, Dave, surprisingly, I guess it didn't deter viewers away, as Gleason Tebow took on Norman Park. And I've been a fan of Norman Park since he won the Tough Smashes season in the 155 weight class, arguably taking on the best guy he's ever fought in Gleason Tebow. And we thought his strategy coming in, Dave, would be kind of to stick and move a lot more, make Tebow chase him, and then in the third round maybe kind of amp it up a little bit. That was not the case in this fight, as he seemed to fight at Gleason's Tebow's pace, which is a more slower pace, methodical pace, and a pace where, he can kind of get in there, grapple a little bit, and throw some big shots. And it was a close fight, but it was a close fight because neither guy did anything. I'm going to go over the stats here. Again, this went a full 15 minutes, and Norman Park landed 44 total strikes, and Gleason Tebow landed 38. Tebow was also 2 of 6 on his takedowns to 0 for 10 by Norman Park. Tebow gets the split decision. Looking at those numbers for 15 minutes, Dave, that is, just looking at a round, that is roughly 15 strikes landed per round. And usually if you only land 15 strikes regardless of what your opponent's doing, that's not a good percentage. Neither guy had a great performance. Neither guy should be impressed in victory or defeat. And once again, that's what Gleason Tebow does. He gets split decisions victory. So I'm not really surprised. And for a card that was supposed to have a lot of hype built to it because of the guy in the main event, this one did not really help and make its case.
Yeah. It was a fine fight to kick off the show, I guess. Got a couple of the names that people should recognize, but I was more disappointed in Park's performance than I was happy with Tebow's performance. Park's an up-and-coming guy. A victory over Tebow doesn't get you a title shot by any means, but beating a household name is quite a big deal. So, Tebow's been around for, what did they say, like 12 years or something?
Yeah, this is now his 16th victory in the UFC, which is top 5 all time, believe it or not.
And, Norman Park will come back. He's a young guy in the sport, and he's growing and all that kind of stuff. So he'll be back, and I don't know what exactly this does for Tebow. He's probably ranked higher now than he's ever been in his career.
Yeah, it's definitely more disappointing on Park's end because that's what Tebow does. He didn't do anything different than he does in any other fight. So that it's definitely more on Norman Park. Probably definitely expected a little more from the man from Northern Ireland, but didn't have it on Sunday night. Moving on to the next fight of the evening, Uriah Hall took on Ron Stallings, who took this fight on a week notice against the former Ultimate Fighter runner-up, and went definitely as you thought it would. Uriah Hall was able to use his superior striking in this fight as he outstruck Ron Stallings 33-10 in the first round. Severely cut up Ron Stallings' face, and this wasn't even a whole round, Dave. It was officially stopped at 3:37, so had it gone on for the extra minute and a half, Uriah Hall probably would have landed over 40 strikes, which, as we just said in our last mention of Park and Hall, was as much as they landed their whole 15 minutes.
Yeah,
so this was a impressive striking display by Hall. Definitely a justified stopping. That cut above and below the eye were nasty.
Check this out.
Yeah, that's the cut above the eye.
If you can see on my screen there.
Yeah, that is Marvin Eastman against Rampage Jackson S with that cut. If people remember that fight.
Do you agree with what Dana said, that if this fight takes place in Las Vegas, that's still going on? Or do you think that cut was bad enough?
Honestly, it may have lasted the round, but I don't think it goes to a second.
Yeah. That's another topic for another day, in my mind. But how can they know that he has a broke toe for 2 rounds and let the fight continue? This guy's face is falling off and they stop it. It's a different topic for a different day. There needs to be set protocols for, injuries like that. But
it seems as though Dana White's the only person that has a problem with the stoppage. Most fans and media find it relatively justified.
Right.
He's the only one that seems to have a problem with it. But again, in all honesty, it may last the first round, possibly, but I don't think a doctor lets him out for the second looking like that. There's no way. I don't care what state or country that's in.
So I have 2 takeaways from this fight, Jim. One, Uriah Hall needs to get into a brawl and come out on the other side victorious because nobody's taking him that serious. He beat Chris Lieben, who is
retired.
That was a shell of his former self. He won that last fight with a broke toe. Then this fight, he punched a guy and got a cut, And I mean, yeah, it's impressive that he had the power to do that, but it doesn't really show a full skill set. You know what I mean? And it's a guy he beat on 5 days' notice. Once again, not Uriah Hall's fault. But he needs a victory over a name that people have heard because he's getting a little, not a little bit older, but he's getting more into his career, and he keeps having these freak things happen to him. The other thing I took away is I can't wait to see Ron Stallings on a full training camp because I was impressed with how, he wasn't in there that long, but I was impressed with what I saw.
Well, it seems as though Uriah Hall wants that rematch with Falopu. I think that's what's next. I really do. I think he wants that fight. You could tell him kind of calling out Costa at the end. I think that's the fight that's going to happen next for him. I really do. So I'm looking forward to that, hopefully relatively soon. I don't think Costa had a serious injury, but obviously it was enough to pull him out of the fight, but nothing that should be that long a time. So hopefully we see that fight coming up. And also, I made a note of this. Uriah Hall once again had some words of inspiration at the end of his post-fight speech there. Is it just now every time that Uriah Hall fights, he's going to say some inspiring words at the end of his interview with Joe Rogan? Because that's the kind of the vibe I'm getting. Just every time he's going to speak, he's going to say something inspiring to rouse the crowd.
Yeah, the only thing that it's a hard argument to win. A couple of my friends, not the ones at work who called me a jerk, the ones
obviously,
yeah, like actual friends at work, they sent a Facebook message. They said this is a hard argument for this guy to win about stop fighting each other inside of a cage after he just tried to break that guy's eye, which is kind of a good point.
It is, but
maybe
I think he meant more about using guns and
stuff. Yeah. I mean, maybe outside of the combat arena, at the press conference, maybe that would be a good spot for that particular argument.
Fair enough. Let's get to the co-main event of the evening, which saw the Cowboy Donald Cerrone take on Ben Henderson for the third time. Looking at the stats, Dave, it paints a picture of a fight that, in my opinion, looked as though Mr. Ben Henderson won and went up 3-0 on the Cowboy Cerrone. But when it came down, the judges decided that the Cowboy won this fight 29-28 on all three scorecards. Looking at the stats, Dave, people were saying, well, Ben Henderson, was acting like a baby. He was trying to hold back tears. At the press conference, he seemed really upset. He was complaining too much. When you outstrike your opponent, Dave, 93-58, and you stop 6 of 7 takedowns, and you lose a fight, I think you have a legitimate beef.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have right to complain and be angry. And if you want to break it down per round, Ben Henderson outstruck Donald Cerrone every single round. First round, 27-19. Second round, 37-17, and that's with the Cowboy takedown. And then the third round, he outstruck him 29-22, and he also shut Cerrone down on 5 takedown attempts.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, this was a close fight. It's not like even with the big striking disparities, Dave, Cerrone was still in this fight. He landed power shots of his own. But at the end of the day, I thought Ben Henderson was the better fighter on Sunday night. And I don't know if it was the few power shots, Dave, or the takedown that he did get that he was on top for maybe a minute or so, or what. But I don't know. I thought Ben Henderson won. Do I get it? It was a close fight. Can I maybe see what the judges were seeing? I'm going to say kind of, because when you look at the stats, it doesn't seem plausible that Cerrone won. It just doesn't.
Okay, a couple of things. Jim. You ready?
Hit me.
Okay, sorry. First of all, I don't like the fact that Ben Henderson's walkout, it should always be shown whether he's a curtain jerker or the main event. Second of all, Cerrone should also be in that group because his walkout is cool. I thought Benson won the fight as well. I'm kind of excited that Cerrone won the fight because, we've seen Henderson at the top. I want to see Cerrone and Khabib, and it looks like that fight's going to happen. I also want to see Cerrone and Dos Anjos or Cerrone and Pettis. All those fights intrigue me. So, the judging clearly was not good on Sunday night, but Bendo's been on the back. He's been on the receiving end of some questionable decisions. But our friend DK on Twitter sent me this, and I'll pose this question to you, Jim. Does Benson need a new coach? It seems he's not changing his point-fighting game plan. Needs more urgency and dominance? No?
I'm going to say no because John Crouch has coached guys that have gone for the finish and continues to work with guys that do that sort of thing. I think that's just Benson's mentality.
Do you think he needs
I don't think it's a John Crouch thing.
Do you think it's a new game plan? I mean, would you rather see a more urgent Ben Henderson, or do you think he needs to stay with what got him to the title and all that kind of stuff?
I don't think he needs a new camp. I think he's with a great camp.
New plan.
A new plan?
Yeah.
I think that's valid. I think that is a valid point because you could tell he was visibly upset. And this is a man who usually is really not that emotional, win or lose. I mean, when you saw him after the Pettis fight, yeah, he got submitted, but did he look like that?
No.
You know what I mean? This was a man that I think truly got upset. And maybe this fight right here, Dave, will do what you're talking about. Light that fire under him that gets him to maybe be more aggressive, be more active for the finish. Maybe this is a fight that changes what we know as the smooth one, Benson Henderson. Maybe this is the fight here. Maybe that's what he needed more than anything else was a decision to not go his way like this and maybe get some and be more active. Because decisions are great, but that's the thing when it gets to the decision. Something like this could happen, and it doesn't go your way. And Cowboy, you could say he got lucky, but at the end of the day, he got the victory, and with him wanting to be active / the title fight already booked, he still has to take another fight anyway, or I guess is going to take another fight, even though he doesn't have to. But Ben Henderson will always be towards the top of the division. He's still not that far, from a title shot. But I think this is a fight that could, when people talk about learning from a loss, well, I think this fight right here is no better opportunity to learn from for Benson Henderson.
Let's also not forget this. And I said it last week, Jim. Donald Cerrone and Eddie Alvarez are two completely different cats to worry about. He had a training camp for Eddie Alvarez and was basically had peaked and was ready. And then they said, oh, now you're going to fight Donald Cerrone, which A, is your friend, B, is a completely different animal than Eddie Alvarez. And you only have 8 days to figure it out. I know Ben Henderson is a professional, and they can put all that stuff aside. But if you've been drilling for Eddie Alvarez, there's a lot of differences between the two. One's tall, one's short. One's kind of Cerrone's a southpaw, right? And Alvarez is orthodox. I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of different things coming at you quick and in a hurry. So, hey, before we get to the main event, I just wanted to throw something at you real quick. Two things. Once again, Johnny Case comes on our show and then wins a fight. So apparently, if you want to keep winning fights, come on our show. And second of all, did you get a chance to see Lorenz Larkin against John Howard?
I saw the highlights. I've yet to see a full fight, but yeah, he knocked out John Howard in the first round and looked good. This is a guy who fought a lot of his career, Dave, at 205 pounds.
He looks amazing and quick, very quick at 170.
Now he's at 170, so the only thing I have to say about Lorenz Larkin, and definitely, as you said, congrats to Johnny Case on another victory there, I like to see him go 15 minutes at the new weight class. If he can go 15 minutes, or at least into the third round, we got to see how that conditioning can hold up. Like we said, this is a man who used to fight at light heavyweight. So let's see how that weight cut wears on him. John Howard's a tough guy, had never been finished before. Awfully impressive to go in there and knock him out in his hometown in the first round. No doubt about it. But let's see him, you have a couple more minutes. Let's see how that weight cut affects him. And if he comes out looking just as good, in the third round as he did in the first, then we got a guy who is a legit contender at 170. But until we see that, it's a nice story, interesting, but I got to see a little more time in the cage at 170.
I'm interested to see. Before we move on to the main event, I just want to check and see. That makes me feel good. I wanted to make sure that they didn't put Lorenz Larkin at like number 13 in the rankings.
And another interesting thing, Dave, he does hold a victory over the current welterweight champion, Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
So.
But I agree. I think your points are very valid, Jim. It's one thing to be the big guy down at 170, but GSP can do about 40 rounds and be fine. Can you make it 3?
I mean, there's a lot of big guys at 170. You know what I mean? A lot of big guys. So
that was my my MVP for the evening was Mr. Lorenz Larkin.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the main event. And we're probably going to talk more about the ramifications and stuff happened after than the actual fight because it was expected. Conor McGregor was going to use his range and his kind of karate, almost lethargic-looking style with pinpoint accuracy as he just picked Dennis Siver apart, who, one, obviously was going to get beat, but two, Dave, for a guy that's known for his spinning back kick, he didn't throw one. I don't know how that happens. I don't get it. That's his best attack, and he did not use it at all. So I don't know if that means he was scared, if he was already admitting defeat before he went in the cage, or he got tagged so quickly it messed up his thinking. Because I mean, there was pretty much nothing there from Dennis Siver to give Conor McGregor any pause or cause for concern in this fight, and McGregor beat a guy he should beat. He beat him decisively. He got the finish, and whether you agree with it or not, he's getting Jose Aldo next.
Couple of things. One, the crowd. I know they like to build it up, but to me it seemed super dead compared to UFC 178 when he fought Poirier. To me, that's what it looked like on TV. Maybe because I was laying this way and it looked weird. I don't know. Anyway, it didn't seem good. That didn't seem good. Obviously, people tuned in on the TV. We saw all the numbers and everything. But I'm going back real quick, Jim, to look at my Facebook status. What really grinds my gears is the following. Wait for it. Hey, look at that. I won a bunch of money on the poker game I'm playing. Sweet. All right, here we go. So here's what I put directly after the fight. I said, so let me get this straight. CM Punk is bad for business, but the hype train, Conor McGregor, can beat a midget, hop over the fence, and get in the face of the champion in the crowd. Yeah, that makes sense. Is he talented? Yes. Is he disrespectful? Absolutely. And then, of course, I added, where can I buy a Brazilian flag? I think Aldo wrecks him. That's what grinds. That's what makes me incredibly angry. Great, you have all the talent in the world. I guarantee you that if Brian Ebersol wins his next fight and hops over the cage, he gets fined.
Maybe.
You know what
I
I
guess
mean?
it depends what he does after hopping out of the cage.
I mean, it's just the same thing like I said about Jones. If he dies in the cage and there's cocaine in his system, like all the work that the UFC's done is gone. If he hops over the cage, what if he slips on that table and kicks a computer at somebody who's sitting in the front row, and a bunch of people get sued? I mean, you want to be the biggest money maker, the champ, the main event, all that kind of stuff. Act like it.
Well, Jose Aldo, I believe when he knocked out Chad Mendes, didn't he jump out around the cage and run into the crowd?
He ran down the steps and then hopped over. You know,
I'm just saying he ran out of the cage too.
I completely agree. He went both instances. To me, that's like apples and oranges almost, because when he went out into the crowd, he ran down the steps, hopped over the barrier, and was in the crowd, and wasn't trying to get at anybody. Conor knew exactly what he was doing when he hopped over the cage.
To be honest, the only thing I had an issue with was him flicking off Dennis Seaver at the touching of the gloves.
I agree. Also,
That to me was that's disrespectful.
Yep.
Dennis Seaver hadn't said one word about you this whole entire time.
Well, did you hear Conor's argument on?
You flick him off. It's not needed. Again, it was not a pay-per-view. It was live television, so they had to cut away, and us viewers are like, what the heck just happened? And Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg are trying to play it off like nothing happened.
Right.
And that, to me, was the most disrespectful thing, more so than him running over to the cage and yelling at Jose Aldo. That, like you said, should he have maybe went down the steps instead of just kind of climbing over and running over tables? It looked like he might have knocked something over. He might have slipped and broke his leg or something. Probably. But, he's hype. It's a fight. He knows what was next. He probably, someone told him where Jose was sitting. He went over there. Jose seemed to take in stride. I mean, he's just sitting there laughing. So, obviously, he didn't seem to have too much of a problem with it. He pulled a GSP and said he wasn't impressed with his performance. So, obviously Jose didn't have too much of an issue with it. Like I said, maybe he shouldn't have. Maybe he should have climbed the steps, so to speak, or maybe waited till after the interview and stuff. But like I said, the only thing I really had a problem with was the flicking off. That was not needed, and that was definitely disrespectful. And I don't know if he'll get fined for that, but probably not. But should be.
His argument that he had against why he did it was, the talk. He said Conor said that the talk leading up to the fight had a lot to do with building up the fight, making sure that people tuned in to watch it. And once they get in the cage, those are two guys. Hey, he basically said, if you can beat me, here's the place to do it. So he went in there like he was getting ready to go to work, and he put his fist out there. And then he was like, and Dennis wants to be disrespectful and not to have gloves. That's why I told him who was number one. You were pretty disrespectful the whole lead up to the fight. You know what I mean? Like
all the talk before the fight was from you, not from Dennis Seaver.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, as much as Chael Sonnen talked and stuff, did Chael Sonnen ever flick anyone off in the middle of the cage?
No. He told Anderson Silva that he absolutely sucks.
Right. That's the difference between Chael Sonnen and Conor McGregor. There is an act to building up a fight, which both gentlemen seem to be able to do, but at the end of the day, Chael Sonnen would respect his opponent. So that's something I think the young Mr. McGregor will have to learn moving on. But other than that, the guy obviously can move the needle. That obviously showed. So there's something to be said for that ability. But he's definitely got to just tone it down a notch. That's all. Just tone it down a notch a little bit. Take some heat from your teammate Gunnar Nelson, Mr. Cold as Ice.
Yeah. Speaking of Gunnar Nelson, when does Gunnar Nelson fight again?
I hope soon. That guy's awesome.
I just clicked on him. He doesn't have a fight.
We'll have to get him something then.
Hey, he's a welterweight. How about
Yes, he
Lorenz
is.
Larkin?
I could dig it.
Speaking of can you dig it, before we get to the preview, you happen to see Monday Night Raw last week?
No.
God. All right. Delete that part of the show.
All right, let's get to UFC on Fox 14, Stockholm, Sweden, Johnson and Gustafsson for the main event. But first fight of the evening will be in the featherweight division as Akira Corassani will take on Sam Sicilia. And, you want to talk about both guys with their back against the wall. I think we might find that in this fight, Dave. Corassani 3-2 in the UFC on a 2-fight losing streak. His last fight was a loss to Max Holloway, speaking of Gunnar Nelson, at his fight night against Rick Story back in October, and 7 of his 12 career victories are by decision. Looking at Sam Sicilia, he is 3-3 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Katsuni Kikuno at the Hunt Nelson fight in Japan, and 7 of his 13 career victories are by knockout. Neither of these two gentlemen have had a great go of it lately in the UFC. Both have been beat, and like I said, I have a feeling the loser could get cut. For Sicilia, if he lost, he would improve to 3-4 in the UFC and would lose 3 of his last 4 fights. And of course, if Corassani lost, he would lose 3 straight after winning his first 3 in the organization. I think this is a fight where both guys are heavy-handed individuals. They like to go in there and bang. I think one will probably get knocked out, and like I said, one will probably get the pink slip as well on the way out, and I think it's a pretty solid fight to kick off this card in Stockholm.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. This is definitely one where somebody should be cage side with the actual pink slip, so when the dude wakes up, they're like, here you go.
Actually, it won't be a pink slip. It'll be a Bellator contract.
And it'll look just like this, Jim.
I'm kidding.
Blank.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I don't have much to add. 2 heavy-handed guys. Someone's going to go home. Someone's probably going to fall asleep.
In light heavyweight, Ryan Bader against Phil Davis, 2 of the top 10 fighters in the division going against each other. Ryan Bader, 11-4 in the UFC. His last fight was a victory in the card he headlined against OSP back in August, and 8 of his 18 career victories are by decision. Looking at Phil Davis, 9-2 with a no contest in the UFC. His last fight was a very impressive victory over Glover Teixeira back at UFC 179, and of his 13 career victories, 7 are by decision. Both are known for being tremendous wrestlers. Both are known for not having the greatest stand-up. The difference is Ryan Bader actually has a little stand-up in his game and has knocked some people out and definitely has some knockout power. And the interesting thing will be, can Ryan Bader keep the fight standing? Because I think he can take down Phil Davis, but I don't think that's the best area to attack him. Because obviously you're going to play into Phil Davis' strength, which is obviously taking guys to the ground and holding them there. That's what he does. And the difference will be whether Ryan Bader can get off some stand-up. Because I think if he can keep some distance, I think he can easily win this fight. But if it turns into a grappling match, while Bader does have tremendous wrestling, you got to favor Phil Davis. Now, I don't think Bader can do what Rumble Johnson did to Anthony Davis and just completely shut him down. I maybe don't see that, but it's going to be a close fight, and unless Bader gets a knockout, probably going to be a pretty boring fight. That's my guess.
Is it a fair assumption on my part that these are 2 of the most delusional people at 205 pounds?
Bader more so than Davis, because at least Davis has beaten Machida and Glover. He's beaten big names. Don't get me wrong, Ryan Bader, yes. Did he beat Rampage Jackson? Yes. But at the same time, that was not championship Rampage Jackson. And let's also not forget this man lost to Tito Ortiz.
Correct.
So the 2 biggest guys, and he also lost to John Jones. It seems like when he has taken on that big name, Dave, Bader has lost. Whereas Davis, with the exception obviously of his loss to Rashad Evans and his loss to Johnson, has beaten some of the top guys. that's the difference. Davis is able to come through and beat some of these guys, and it's quite amazing because he's a relatively one-dimensional fighter. He somehow has been able to get it done.
Right. Phil Davis, if you've been watching any of the lead-up, Phil Davis thinks that a win gets him the next title shot. I think that is absolutely 250% ridiculous.
The winner of the main event will be getting a title shot.
Yeah, no kidding. But he's like, it's my time. It's my time to get in there. And no, your time was when you fought Rashad Evans in Chicago, and had you won that, you would have gotten a title shot. But you didn't. You got dominated for 5 rounds. And it's
also, had he not lost to Rumble Johnson.
Correct. And, I mean, hey, these are two guys that have been around a long time. You cannot argue the fact that they're top 10 in the light heavyweight division in the world. You can't argue that. But it's kind of like the heavyweight division. Like Bigfoot Silva is a big part of the heavyweight division. Do I see him ever challenging whoever's at the top of the heavyweight division? No. Same thing with these guys. They're top 10 in the world. I just don't see what they have to offer anybody who's going to be the champion.
Right, and I know he's coming off a loss, but I feel the winner of this fight probably faces Daniel Cormier. That's my feeling. Yeah, the winner. Even though Cormier is coming off a loss.
Yeah, that's a good loss for Cormier. You know, they're not going. Who could they give him off of a loss? I mean, the loser of the main event.
Possibly, but if we all agree, or you and I agree, Davis would need another fight before he gets a title shot against Bader. So to me, who would be the next best guy? He already beat Glover. He already beat Lyoto Machida. He's not in the division anymore. There's no more Dan Henderson. He's above some of these other guys. He already fought Johnson and lost. So to me, Daniel Cormier, he hasn't fought yet.
I don't know if I could handle DC. Like, what if they did like a 3-way fight? Like a Rage in the Cage. Like, these guys are just going to wrestle hump each other, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but...
I mean, it has to happen, I guess.
That's what I mean. Who else is he going to fight?
Yeah, weird.
All right, let's get to the co-main events of the evening in the middleweight division. As former 2-time Pride champion and Strikeforce champion, Dan Henderson will take on another former Strikeforce champion in Gegard Mousasi. Looking at Henderson, he is 7-6 in the UFC, riding quite a kind of losing streak here. Speaking of Daniel Cormier, that was his last fight and loss at UFC 173. This is Dan Henderson's first fight at 185 pounds since 2010. All his fights had been at 205 or some type of catch weight in the case of his fight against Fedor. And of his 30 career victories, 14 are by knockout. Also, conversely, he has 14 decisions. So he either knocks you out or gets a decision, just in case you were curious there. Looking at Gegard Mousasi, 2-2 in the UFC since moving over from Strikeforce. His last fight was a loss to Jacare in the card that he headlined with Jacare back in September. And 18 of his 35 career victories are by knockout. Now, of course, the key to this fight is whether Henderson uses his wrestling or not. If he can control Mousasi. He puts himself in some submission danger, but Henderson's gone into pretty deep waters before with submission guys and have come out unscathed, so I think he'll be okay there. But if it stays standing, it's a very, very interesting fight, Dave. You have more kind of the cerebral approach and countering of Gegard Mousasi, and then, of course, you have the H-bomb of Dan Henderson, very methodical and likes to throw that out there. And honestly, he has power in both hands, but people talk about the right hand. So knowing Henderson kind of the way he acts, he's never really tried to key on his wrestling, especially as of late in his career, Dave. I think we're going to see a stand-up fight, and I think it's going to be a fun fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a knockout from either gentleman here in this 3-round affair.
Is this is his first trip recently to 185?
Yeah, since 2010.
2010.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that I'd be interested to see. Dan hasn't had a whole lot of problem with weight. Like you mentioned, his catchweight fights were more, short notice type things and stuff like that. but it's in Sweden, so hopefully he's already been over there and is able to get the weight under control. As long as the weight cut is good, I hope we see the Dan Henderson that we remember. But Gegard Mousasi is nobody to shake your head at, especially at 185. He's been doing it for how many years at 185? This, like you said, power in both hands for Hendo, and I don't know what this does for the 185-pound division, but it's definitely a fight that Gegard they both need to get back on the winning track, but Gegard's already he's already ranked within the division, so a win for him gets him in title contention, but there's kind of a backlog of competitors at 85, so be interesting.
The main event of the evening is in the light heavyweight division as Alexander Gustafsson will take on Anthony Rumble Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at Rumble Johnson, he is 9-4 in the UFC, overall riding a 8-fight winning streak. His last fight was a knockout victory over Little Nog, and of his 18 career victories, 12 are by knockout. Looking at his opponent, Alexander Gustafsson, 8-2 in the UFC. His last fight was against Jimmy Manuel, a victory back in the headline card that he had against him in March. And of his 8, also Gustafsson has 18 career victories, and 10 of his are by knockout. Very intriguing fight, Dave. You, of course, have the powerful and strong and ruthless Anthony Rumble Johnson against the long and lanky, and I guess you can kind of say cerebral Alexander Gustafsson. And The question, of course, is can Rumble get inside and land those vicious bombs? He's able to get inside the reach, and he's able to kind of counteract the also great footwork and kicks of Alexander Gustafsson. Can't forget that. If he decides to wrestle Gustafsson and he takes him down, is he able to get through Gustafsson's guard? Even though I mentioned that majority of his wins are by knockout, Gustafsson has a pretty slick submission game. We've seen him pull some great submissions in his tenure in the UFC. And obviously Rumble Johnson has been submitted a couple of times in those career losses. So that is also an area to look out for if Rumble can take the fight to the ground. Can he deal with Gustafsson's submission game? Also the fact that this is a 5-round fight. Johnson has had a career of conditioning being an issue.
Yep.
And we know Gustafsson has gone 5 rounds twice. Now, obviously, he kind of ran out a little bit of gas there in the Jones fight, but was still throwing and was still dangerous in the 5th round of that one. So, obviously, conditioning-wise, it definitely favors Mr. Gustafsson. And I think fighting in Sweden, being home, helps. Even though I don't think the fight's terribly long, I'm sure it's probably 8 or 10 hours. It's not the longest flight a UFC fighter's had to travel for a fight from Florida to Sweden, but that is definitely time zone. That's always something to adjust to, and with his issues making weight, will that be an issue against the guy who will be completely used to what's going on there in Stockholm? That's just a factor with Rumble's past, but very, very interesting fight. I think it's going to be fun. I don't think it's going to be disappointing. I think the strategies I outlined will give either guy the victory and a shot at John Jones for the UFC title.
How's this for being the greatest podcast on earth, Jim? A flight from Miami, Florida to Stockholm, Sweden, 10 hours, 28 minutes.
I was pretty close. What did I say, like 8 to 10?
Yeah.
That was just guesstimating.
See, that's me going that, like, the mile is here, and that's me going, like, that extra mile.
Right.
For you, the fans. I was watching the lead-up, I believe it was Saturday or Sunday, for this fight, whatever they call those nowadays. And, I know they do a good job of making you think that this guy's going to win, this guy's going to win. Gustafsson has very, very good movement. And that was kind of the argument that everybody was saying in the on the lead-up show. And I went back and looked, and he does. He doesn't stay stationary very long. He's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. He's got good angles, all that kind of stuff. And yes, Johnson's got crazy power, and he could knock Gustafsson out like that. that's a fact. But I think that Gustafsson, as long as he keeps moving, he'll be fine. I'm glad you brought up the point of cardio, Jim, because cardio may very well be an issue in this fight. But remember, that was when Anthony Johnson was cutting 30-plus pounds. He's at a weight now where he's very comfortable. I don't think he cuts a whole lot of weight. So this will be his first possible test at 205 where we can actually see his cardio. So there's a lot of things to learn in this fight. Like we said earlier, Cormier, his loss to Jones, that's a good loss. This could, if Gustafsson does win and move on to fight Jones, this could be a good loss for Johnson. If he shows that his cardio is up to where it needs to be and all that kind of stuff, then everything will be A-okay, with him going forward. But it's a great fight, man.
I'm definitely, people were talking about, I had a lot of friends that were big supporters of Conor McGregor. They were really excited about his fight on Sunday, and that's justified for them. But I was more excited about this one. I'm really a fan of both guys. Both guys are tremendous, and I'm looking forward to a great show on Fox in Sweden. So with that said, Dave, let's get to the picks.
Let's do it.
First fight of the evening, featherweight division, Akira Corsani against Sam Sicilia. I think this is kind of a pick'em fight, but I'm going to go with Sam Sicilia to once again beat Corsani, and Corsani losing in his home country. I just think that Sicilia maybe hits a little harder. I think kind of has a little more of a base with some wrestling too. I think he has a little more tools. So give me the man from Washington to win.
I'm gonna take Sam Sicilia because I think he's got a sweet beard. How's that work for you?
In light heavyweight, Ryan Bader versus Phil Davis. Davis just has a knack to beat some of these top guys, Dave, whether it's by a fluke or what. So, and Bader in these situations is typically not beating the top ranked guy. So, that may be not the best basis to pick a fight, but give me Mr. Wonderful in this one.
Check this out. I'm gonna pick Bader via. He's gonna duck out of the way like he did Jimmy Manuel or whoever that was. He's gonna counter. He's gonna hit him with a counter left, knockout, bam, pow. Wow. Ryan Bader.
All right, middleweight division, Gegard Mousasi against Dan Henderson. Both are coming off a loss. Both have something to prove. Obviously, Henderson moving back to the middleweight division. I don't know. I think Henderson only has a few more fights left in him, Dave. Maybe I'll be proved wrong here, but I'm going to go with Gegard Mousasi in this one.
Yeah, because I want to see the fight. I want to see him fight more. I'm going to pick Hendo with the H-bomb.
Main event of the evening, Alexander Gustafsson against Anthony Rumble Johnson. I know, Dave, you usually use props and whatnot here on the show, but I'm not going to say my answer. I'll just show it to the folks at home here who my pick is. So there you go. That's my pick.
Nice. Hold on. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Wait, what?
Wait.
Was that the right card?
No, I don't think so. No, I'm gonna go with the Mauler as well. Like I said, I think his footwork is gonna. Take care of the deal. And like I said, Jim, 100%. I think Gustafsson, but I think that this could be a step forward for Rumble. So definitely tune in. It's free, fellas and ladies. It's free. Tune in.
All right, got a couple people to thank here on the show. Of course, VigilanteMMA.com. Follow them on Twitter at VigilanteMMA. Of course, our good friends Chuck Grace and Sean Smith running things over at MMAinsider.net. The site Twitter account is at MMAinsiderNet. And then Sean, always good stuff on his personal account, at Sean_W_Smith. Ryan Pickup, MMA for Life. Great job always on Twitter covering all the weigh-ins and results and all that. So if you ever need to if you're out for some reason on a fight or weigh-ins, you want to see what's going on, Ryan always has the hookup on that at _MMA for life. Of course, our friends covering the local scene here in the Midwest, bluegrassmma.com. You can follow them on Twitter at bluegrassmma. And, of course, the great AJ Hiller at MMAsignaturesusa.com, and his Twitter handles at AJ MMA Signatures. And for friends of the show, they know we've interviewed Jessica I several times. AJ has just inked a deal, I believe a multi-fight deal, with Jessica I. So if you were looking for Jessica I stuff, AJ is going to have a lot of Jessica I stuff coming in. So definitely hit out his website at, again, MMAsignaturesusa.com. All right, he is the Juice, Dave Sadler. You can follow him on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. Any final words here for this week's show?
No. Tune in Saturday. It should be a good card, top to bottom. So, gotta love the freebies.
All right. Once again, I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And once again, look forward to this Saturday. And thank you for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.